What's up, everyone? This is Lan here with another episode of Cheeseheadz Weekly. The Packers were able to pull off a win versus the Carolina Panthers, 33-30, but there's lots of stuff to talk about from this game, and that is partially why this episode is so late. We're going to get a guest on the show here to talk through some things just that went wrong in that game, some of the good things. And, hopefully the show doesn't get too negative today. Should be fun. Talk some Joe Barry, talk some Jair Alexander, and talk some Jordan Love, of course, as well, like we like to do. Before we get into that, you can check out the Q&As and the polls on Spotify. Participate in those. Lots of fun there. There is a link in the description of every episode on every platform to send in a voice message. You can send in a question or just something you want me to address, and those could be a lot of fun. The show is available on pretty much every platform, pretty much anywhere you get your podcast, except for Amazon Music would be the only major one that we are not on. New episodes come out every Tuesday, and you can hit the bell icon on Spotify or on YouTube. The show is available on YouTube, youtube.com/@cheeseheads_weekly. And as of now, it's not video. Hoping to do video here in the near future. But be sure to check that out. Subscribe, like, and comment on any of those episodes there. And you can hit the bell there as well to be notified when a new episode comes out. You can tell your friends about the show. That is awesome if you can do that. Be sure to rate the show. You can rate it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Both of those would be great. And you can even review the show on Apple Podcasts, which is also great. You can follow the show on Instagram or pretty much anywhere on social media. The only real platform I care about is Instagram, and you can follow me at Cheeseheads_weekly there. You can check out the website for the show, greatcove.net/cheeseheads. All the episodes available there, as well as social media platforms and just anywhere, all the platforms, everywhere you can find me and subscribe to the podcast. So be sure to check that out as well. And I guess we will get into the show here today and bring Troy on the show to talk Packers football. Let's go. All right, so we are here with Troy, bringing him back on the show to talk about a lot of different things, I guess. We'll start with just reacting to the game, and go from there, talk about some of the defensive struggles, and and then maybe get into some playoff numbers, and the Packers' chances of making the playoffs. So start off by reacting to the game. Packers were able to barely come out with a win over the Panthers. That game was not supposed to be close, especially with how well the offense performed. What were your overall thoughts just on how the game went?
Well, start positive, right? We'll start with the offense.
Yeah.
But I think the offense did its part. I mean, they scored 33 points. And so when you look at the game, I think Aaron Jones to me would be my number one player. Jordan Love had a good game, but you look at what Aaron Jones did for the day. He had 127 yards rushing, averaged 6 yards per attempt. He had a long of 39. So I mean, he had a really good game. Dylan was pretty quiet, seven rushes for 12 yards. So Aaron Jones, I think, kind of set the tone. He took a lot of pressure off Jordan Love
Mm-hmm.
and the offense, and he looked spry. He looked really good in that game.
He did.
Yeah, he looked like he had a step. He had a really good day, and I think had he not had as good of a day, that game could have been more of a struggle for him. But he kept the chains moving, and it was a big help for Green Bay. in that contest. So that would be my offensive player of the game. And I think the other thing too he had was when I look at some of his, he produced 5 runs of at least 10 yards. And so that's pretty good chunks of yardage that he was picking up at the same time too. He
Yeah.
was there was missed tackles. He had 8 first downs, I believe. So um, I think he was a big contributor. And Love didn't have to put up as gaudy as numbers, especially with some of his receivers out of the game.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so I think that would be my player of the game. Who's your player of the game for offense?
Um, I kind of picked one that was under the radar.
Yep.
Not maybe not really player of the game that someone would just watch the game and say, "Oh, this guy was amazing."
Hmm.
You look at his numbers. He had a carry for 7 yards and 4 receptions for 44 yards. But it's Bo Melton, and
Hmm.
he's really come on. Um, I mean, if you can call it coming on, he hasn't really played very much, but the Packers really like him. They've talked pretty highly about him, the progress he's making in practice. He spent most of his time on the practice squad and was elevated to the active roster just to kind of help fill in for all these injuries at receiver.
Hmm.
And that's really why he got playing time, and they put him out there, and he made some plays happen, and had a very nice game, and Jordan Love was willing to throw it to him, and yeah, I thought he performed very well, and definitely, I think potentially earned himself a spot on the active roster. I believe he has one more elevation from the practice squad, and then the Packers would have to actually sign him to the 53-man roster, and I think he's earned a shot at that. So we'll see what happens. I expect him to be elevated and play next week against the Vikings, and yeah, I guess we'll just go from there and see how he performs. But he does
Hmm.
play a good many snaps on special teams, and that does help his chances of getting on the roster, which is pretty big for this Packers team. So yeah, that's my player of the game for the offense.
He was a nice piece. He did step up with Reed out and with Watson out.
Yeah,
He played 25 of the offensive 66 snaps in that game. So he, like you said, he's on the field quite a bit, and he was excited to be there too. Watching the game, he was having a lot of fun, and
yeah.
he looked very comfortable in that role and in that position. Um, so that's a good call out for Bo Melton. I agree.
All right, so I guess we'll talk about the defense a little bit.
Hmm.
Talk about a little bit. There wasn't much good on defense at all, but who is your kind of player of the game on defense?
So I'd say my player of the game, and just because of the pressure on the quarterback, it would have to be Preston Smith, outside linebacker. What he delivered in that game, he led the team with 5 pressures. He had 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, and so I think he did as much as he could have done for his part. If everybody else would step up, and do a little bit different, but we can talk about that in a minute. But individually, I think he had a pretty decent game. Obviously, we know that you know Young had a career day for himself, and but at the same time, I think Smith did what he had to do to put some pressure on him. But yeah, not a whole lot to say about the defense in that game at all. There's more glaring weaknesses and issues that we can point to. Um, but again, individually, that's who I'd pick.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good pick. He was getting pressure on the quarterback, and he had the Packers' only sacks in that game.
Hmm.
Um, my player was also, I mean, looking at the name, you think kind of under the radar, but to be honest, he was actually one of their best players out there just because no one else was playing very well. And that's Lucas Van Ness. And
Hmm.
another young guy, their first round pick, rookie. And he is starting to come on. He's starting to show those flashes. He was really quiet after week one. Week one, he had 5 pressures. After that, he was really quiet until a couple games ago or so. And ever since, he's been making a few splash plays a game. And that's just kind of what you need to just continue that development and hopefully continue to develop into a really good player in this league. I think the Packers really have high hopes for him. And yeah, in this game, he had 2 quarterback hits and a run stop. Um, yeah, he was involved, and those don't look great. He didn't finish with any sacks, so they don't really stand out extremely well. Just overall in the box score, but just he was contributing. He was disruptive, and he definitely had an impact on the game there on defense at also at outside linebacker. So Lucas Van Ness is my pick, and I'm excited to just kind of see him continue to grow and hopefully get better within this defense.
Yeah, good pick. He's number one pick, so obviously you expect production from him, and he'll get better. And so I think there's some bright spots on defense that we see. There's definitely some not so bright spots too, but I would agree with that call out.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of those not so bright spots. Um, First of all, I mean, just give me your thoughts on Jordan Love's performance in that game.
Yeah, Jordan Love, I think he did just fine in that game. When you look at his numbers, um, he was under pressure, um, just 5 of 30 dropbacks, so he had a nice clean pocket to work with, and he was excellent in that area. 8.2 yards per completion or per attempt, I should say. And then his completion percentage was almost 80%. Had 116 passer rating, so his numbers were good. He had on a couple passes that were over 20 yards, just one sack, didn't have a turnover. So when you look at his numbers, I think his numbers were pretty good. And when you look at his numbers throughout the year, they've been very good too. So this guy is Jordan Love is doing well. He's kept the turnovers down, and that's helped. That's going to have to continue with the next 2 games. You know, they get a Viking team with a backup quarterback
Yeah,
in Jaron Hall. So that's a game you got to win. And then they got the Bears next the following week, which don't be surprised if they sit Justin Fields in that game. If they're gonna move him, they're gonna sit him. They don't want him getting hurt on the last game of a meaningless year for them. Um, but as far as Jordan Love, I think his path these next 2 games are there for him to continue to perform well. And so, despite the defense, so if he can do that, I think the next 2 games are very winnable. And of course, we need some help to get into the playoffs, but I like our chances.
yeah. Um, I feel like Jordan Love's just really shown
Hmm.
so much growth just this year. Just the fact that he can put up, that he can have a good game, um, and but yet maybe not play really well, but like they still put up 33 points. He made all the plays he needed to make. He was in total control of the offense, and he just really carries himself like a true veteran leader of the team, of the locker room, and he he looks really good out there. He makes the plays he has to make. He seems to be pretty good in clutch situations. Led a game winning drive in that one, and just really excited for him moving forward. And I think the Packers did find their franchise QB.
I would agree. I mean, after we talked about it earlier in the year, you and I, where we talked about Jordan Love and what's it going to take if we know. And we said, well, we should know by Thanksgiving if the trajectory has been going upward and if he's improving with each game. And I think we've seen that. And I think he was getting a lot of um, bad press, especially from Colin Cowherd at first, and I think Jordan Love has proven that wrong. And you got to give the guy time. He's putting up very similar numbers to what Aaron Rodgers did his first year with Green Bay as a starting quarterback. So I like where it's pointing, and I think the future's bright. We just got to fix the defense.
Yep. Um, Let me see here. I guess we'll probably get into some talk on defense here. We got um Joe Barry. I think, at least for me, I thought he should have been fired at the end of last year.
Mhm.
And I kind of understood a little bit why Matt LaFleur kept him around. So um, I was a little bit unhappy, but not overly so. Now I kind of wish they would just move off him right now, instead of having to wait till the end of the season. But this seems to be kind of the way Matt LaFleur operates. He's loyal to his guys. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, Matt LaFleur, he's not been able to get a really good defensive coordinator here yet. And I think we hopefully um, can get that figured out in the off season. But this is a major issue at this point. And yeah, I feel like the defense is just really pretty much just it's broken right now, and um, it's going to take a good bit to fix it. I think it's going to take the off season, and I don't think it's all just Joe Barry. I think there's the defensive culture just as a whole is not great, and obviously that probably is a lot Joe Barry, um, and the players, how the players respond. To Joe Barry and to the scheme there on defense. But um, yeah, obviously Joe Barry has to go at this point. And yeah, I have some other things I do want to talk about, more specifically on the defense. But what are your thoughts overall on this defense? What do they have to do to fix it?
Fire Joe Barry, plain and simple. And if Matt LaFleur wants to continue to back him, then fire him too. I'm fired up about this. I'm just so sick and tired of it. I agree with you. They should have fired him last year. And now here we sit. You, okay, this is not hard. I mean, you have a I think the players don't respect Joe Barry, and I think that's why you see Jair Alexander doing what he's doing. The guy, I think he's pulling these antics because he wants to be traded. I don't think he plays another down in Green Bay. He's suspended this next game, right? And you're going to see him he's not going to play in the Chicago game. He will not play. Something will happen and he will not play. If he does, I'll come on your show and tell you I was wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong. I think because the Green Bay, they want to trade him and they want him to be healthy. And he wants out. And there's more things than the coin toss going on here. But I think he's flat out frustrated with the defense. That's why Rasul Douglas was traded. He was complaining about the defense. Next thing you know, they ship him to Buffalo. So if that's what LaFleur and Barry are going to do, and well, we're going to get rid of these guys because our schemes work. No, they don't work. Look at the numbers. So Carolina entering that game was ranked 29th in scoring. Do you know how many NFL teams there are? 32. They ranked 29th. They scored 14 points, 14.7, if you want to be exact, per game. How many points did they score? They doubled it. They scored 30. And they could have scored more, but their kicker missed some extra points. And 30th in total yards allowed, or I'm sorry, 30th in total yards. So Carolina puts up about 270 yards a game. They put up 394 to a quarterback who had been struggling, and what was his passer rating going into the game? 31.9, I think is what I read. Terrible, whatever it is, a terrible passer rating, right? And here he is piling up these amazing numbers. 394 yards is what Carolina piled up. So I misspoke. Bryce Young, he threw for 312 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 26 first downs. They averaged 6.44 yards per play. They had touchdowns on their first two fourth quarter drives. The only thing that stopped them on their third quarter, on their third drive, and at the end of the game, is time expired. And so,
Yeah.
had he got up there and snapped that ball, they probably kick. Well, Panera was kicking, so who knows what would have happened. But they had the chance to tie the game. And so this is against Carolina. They should have smashed them and blew them out. But and what does Joe Barry say? He says, "Well, um, no crying over spilled milk. You just deal with it." Well, they haven't dealt with it, and it almost ended the Packers' playoff hopes. So,
Yeah.
but that's brutal. That's just brutal, and you have to do better. And you look at these quarterbacks that had career games against us. And, Tommy DeVito, he went from having a career game where his two Italian friends were kissing each other on Monday Night Football to his agent and his dad. They were like celebrating, so they were so thrilled and they kept panting over to them during the game. And so, and now he's benched.
Yeah.
Now he's benched. So these guys, I mean, goodness, they should not be having career games against us. So I'm kind of worried what Jaron Hall's going to do. I mean,
Yeah.
if he has a career game, then will Green Bay say, maybe what we're doing is not working? Uh, the only other thing I could say to it, Landry, would be this. Matt LaFleur is saying all the right things publicly. He's going to support his coach. But privately, he already knows that, yeah, they got to make a change. And I'm hoping it's that. And they do need to make a change. But if he's going to stick with them, I know Robin, who's been on the show, said, or maybe it was you, I can't remember. One of it, we were texting, and would you really get rid of LaFleur even if, if he continues to support Barry? And it's like, well, maybe you wouldn't as long as, but someone's got to make the call to fire Barry. And if LaFleur says I'm not doing it, then that's why I said he's got to go too. But, I'd
Yeah.
rather it just be Barry. But if he's going to go to bat for him to the point of, well, if he's gone, I'm gone too. Well, okay, then I guess you're gone, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't think he'll do that.
No, I don't think so either. I do think Barry will be gone at the end of the season.
Yep.
I just think it's gone on way too long. Um,
Hmm.
if we just look at the Packers defense, it seems like they have good players, and but just the Packers have had these same issues on defense year after year. They've always been bad against the run. Um,
Hmm.
they've always had issues tackling, most of the time at least. There were stretches where there are a few games here and there. There's just no consistency though. They've not overall not tackled well. They've struggled with missed tackles. That and the run game have been the main
Hmm.
issues. Now everything's falling apart. Like they can't.
Hmm.
I mean, Joe Barry tried to get more aggressive last game. He tried to change the game plan. The game plan was different, but I feel like he doesn't really, for one, know how to make changes in game. They went with a lot more man coverage, and the Panthers, at first they were able to stop them a fair amount like that, and then after a while, mainly after halftime, and you look at the fourth quarter as well. The Panthers they figured it out, and Joe Barry did not make any change. Panthers were able to counter that defense, that scheme, and make some plays, and Joe Barry just was not able to make those counter adjustments to help them win that game. And it's way more than that game,
Hmm.
like we already said. But there's just been these issues on the Packers defense that just seemingly come with the Packers. Like I said, the run defense, and I feel like there's always been kind of a lack of energy and physicality. At times, there's been games here and there, but there's just never been real consistency on defense. Every now and then they have a good game, but they cannot sustain it. And you look at other teams around the league. Just look at the Browns defense. They
Hmm.
have a good game, then they have another good game, and they keep having good games. They've been good all year, you know. One good game here and there is not good enough. And We need more consistency. We need the culture overall needs to change. The players, I think Barry lost the locker room, a long time ago. These players have not been um, responding well to to the scheme or really anything. They just we've lacked energy. Jair Alexander, when he's been on the field, has not been playing well either lately.
Hmm.
It's just everything's fallen apart, and I think it has to do a lot with just Joe Barry not understanding how his players should succeed. I hear some things about um, players just kind of not really understanding what they're doing while they're out there. They're just kind of doing what they're told to do without really understanding why. Different things like that, and that's just not going to work. So I feel like the Packers, they really don't. They have some good players, some players that we think should be really good. Like you look at Jair Alexander. Um, Throughout his career, we were like he's a good player, but he's never actually reached. Every year we think he's going to, but he's never actually reached like the top of corners. He has a game here and there, like the one game he shut down Justin Jefferson, but then he has a bad game. I think, and you look at Rashawn Gary. We think we as Packers fans, I think sometimes consider him, well, he's underrated. The league doesn't really, the rest of the league doesn't consider him to be a top pass rusher. We do because we see that potential in him. But yet, you look at Myles Garrett, you look at Nick Bosa. Teams don't have to game plan for a
Hmm.
guy like Rashawn Gary for this defense. Um, I mean, I've heard a coach told Myles Garrett after a game that he completely wrecked his game plan because you have to game plan for those guys, and I feel like we have to have some way for these players to consistently succeed. Rashawn Gary's a great player. I'm not saying he's not a good player. I think Joe Barry needs to understand how to use these players, how to put them in positions to be disruptive on every single play and put them in the best position to succeed. And he's really not been doing that. And it's just he tried to adapt the scheme. He tried to put more blitzes in, but they didn't work because he tried to be safe and aggressive at the same time. Whenever he's blitzing, he puts everyone else deep, and you have these easy, quick, short underneath passes wide open, lots of yards after the catch because the Packers can't tackle, and just because wide open. Lots of green grass after the catch, open for these guys to just run like crazy after the catch. You look at that Tampa Bay game. Rashad White was running like crazy. Like
Hmm.
he had a few catches where catch and run all the way to the end zone. We've seen a lot of plays like that from a lot of different players, and it's just been crazy. And Packers really just need to change, just overall, just to get kind of a fresh environment, some fresh air, just to kind of let these players settle in and be able to hopefully get better and develop to their full potential that I think a lot of these players aren't at right now. So um, should be interesting to see um, who Matt LaFleur goes with. Um, I do think he will get fired, but it's just been crazy how bad it has been, and
Hmm.
yeah, I can't
Well,
wait to see him gone.
I can't either. And you look at some of the numbers here but I agree with you. I think he's lost locker room. And I think, when Jair says in a press conference, they ask him to describe a play and he's like, well, I'm just doing what the play design was, doing what's called on the field.
Yep.
In other words, yeah, I know. Yeah, I wouldn't have called it, but got to do what's on got to go with the play that's called. And so that's what you're seeing, and players aren't believing in the defense. They have no confidence. When you watch even like Baltimore's defense, and just when you watch another game where you see a really good defense, you're like, whoa, that's what we could be. Um, That's what a defense looks like. And it's just almost like, wow, we're a long ways away. I think we have the right players. Um, Jair, he's underperformed, but a lot of it could just be he's just tired of the culture and so now he's got an attitude. He seems like he has an attitude,
Yeah.
you know, and he doesn't care. And that's not good either, because if you're in a work environment and get a bad boss and I've had some bad bosses, you still do your work and you do it well. Do it to the best of your abilities because somebody's watching. And yeah, your boss might be bad, but eventually those bad bosses will get fired or they'll leave and they'll get replaced by somebody that's better. And so Jair, I wish he would just be professional and just keep doing and saying right things and doing right things and just playing to the best of his ability. But
Hmm.
instead, I think we're seeing, like you said, a lost locker room. But when you look at some of the numbers here, just over the last three weeks that we've been playing here, here's some interesting numbers. The Packers defense, the last 3 weeks, they've for passing yards, 62 completions out of 85 attempts. That's a 73% completion ratio. 851 yards total, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 132. Was it 158 is like perfect, 158.3 or something like that. So 132 passer quarterback rating. And the quarterbacks that did this were Tommy DeVito, who's now benched, Baker Mayfield, who has, lost his status in Cleveland, ended up going to Tampa. He's a decent quarterback. He's the best of the three. And then Bryce Young, who prior to that was a struggle. So DeVito, Mayfield, and Young, those are the guys, those are the numbers that we've given up. My. You played Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen, you're going to be getting video game type numbers likely, but um, I just don't see any other way out. I think he has to go. And the fans, I mean, it's all over Twitter, it's online, you know, Packer publication. Everything you read is there's just this sentiment. This he needs to go. Um, so I think it'll happen too. It's just fun to talk about. Well, not fun to talk about, but but I think everybody just wants it to be done now, and Packers are just saying, let's just wait. Um,
Hmm.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Um, I'd like to talk a little bit about candidates.
Sure.
That's always interesting.
Hmm.
Do you have any off the top of your head that you think would be good candidates to replace Joe Barry to just kind of revitalize this defense?
Yeah. Um, I jokingly, I think, I think I texted you and said I take the defensive coordinator from Appalachian State at this point.
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. If you wanted to be the coordinator, I think you could do a better job. So, I do care who it is,
Yeah.
obviously, but um, two that come to mind were just the names that were mentioned the last time this job position was open,
Yeah.
and one was Jim Leonard.
Hmm.
Um, now, would he be interested? Would he want to do that? You know, why not try and see?
Hmm.
But he's an option. And then the other one that would be on my list would be Ejiro Evero, who's with Carolina currently. Now, they've won 2 games,
Hmm.
um, but his defense is doing really well in Carolina. Um, they're ranked fairly high as far as a team defense goes. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that their ranking is right up there as one of the better defenses in the NFL. They just kind of get lost because, you know, offensively they're not a very good team, so that's what's get lost in it. But defensively, they're very, very good. So wherever he's went, his defense has done well, especially when he was with Denver too. Now, will he be let go? Um, I don't know. I would think it's probably 50-50. The new if I'm assuming that they'll have a new head coach, will they
Yeah.
retain him? I would. Um, so that's a guy that I think you could, and then LaFleur really liked him too. So those would be the two that just come to mind. Um, other than the guy from Appalachian State, like I said. So, by the way, I did just for fun look him up, and he actually is a pretty good defensive coordinator for him. So, I just randomly picked a college team, and
Yeah.
so I had no insight on that. Um, I've heard other names too, like Al Harris, and I don't know why,
Hmm.
but I know he's a former Packer, but I think I don't know. I think you need a guy that's solid with a good reputation and background, and he hasn't been doing it that long as far as being the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He's a defensive backs coach right now, and I don't think we need someone learning. I think we need someone proven. And
Hmm.
those would be the choices that I'd go with. Any come to mind for you that you can think of that? All right, good. I was having trouble, but
Yeah, apparently I guess you have to wait 10 minutes now whenever you move on to a
oh,
next meeting or something.
okay, good to
I don't
know.
know. That's what it was telling me. And
Gotcha.
I don't know why
Okay,
it changed that, but
I'll ignore my frantic texts, but yeah.
well, they never
Um,
came through, so I tried to send
oh,
the text to you too, and it didn't go through. So,
weird. Yeah, because I sent a couple and okay. All right. Well, we're here.
yep,
Um, yeah. So I think I left off with I had another idea for a defensive coordinator, and I was thinking of, have you ever heard of Mike Pettin? Our former defensive coordinator, Mike Pettin.
yeah, I've heard of
Yeah.
him.
All right. We don't want him either. All right. So seriously though, yeah, I as far as Carolina's defensive coordinator, I don't see them letting him go, but
Yeah,
his team ranks in the top 10. Players love him, and
yeah.
he's super good. But if they did, um, I mean, he's a head coaching candidate too. So if something like that would come available, he may do something that way. But so I don't
Hmm.
know that we would land him, but um, the nice thing about, trying to get this done sooner than later too is, you can, start setting your sights on somebody. But any player or any defensive coordinators come to mind for you?
Well, the two you mentioned would definitely be at the top of my
Hmm.
list. I've also heard that Mike Zimmer is ready to come back to coaching. He wants to coach next year. That would be an interesting one. And of course, he definitely knows the division. Would be a little bit weird having a coach for the Vikings for a good many years, and definitely would be a little different having him coaching for the Packers. But um, I don't think he'd be bad as a defensive coordinator. Um, yeah, the main, I would say, top of my list are definitely the two you mentioned. The two they were looking at last year, and they did actually offer Jim Leonard the job. Um, didn't work out, and yeah, I'm not sure if he'd want to come back or look um, if he would be looking for a job in the NFL like that or not. Um, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, it looked like Matt LaFleur had two really good candidates, and then he had a third one, and he went with the third one for some reason,
Hmm.
which would be Joe Barry, and that did not work out at all. So, Ejiro Evero, I would definitely be, definitely would definitely like to have him. I think that will be tough, but he's been defensive coordinator twice now for two different teams. He's young. Like you said, players like him, and that's definitely a big part of it. And yeah, that's why I really like the Rich Bisaccia hire because players
Hmm.
really liked him, and so I was really happy with that one. Of course, the special teams has not been great, but they can still get better, I guess. We'll see how that goes.
Right. Yeah, they can get better. Yeah, Mike Zimmer's interesting. Like you said, he does want to come back to coaching. Obviously, he could. I don't think he wants to come back as a head coach. I
Yeah.
think he loves defense, and I think that's where he'd come back. Um, if he gets us in, if he would get Green Bay in the top 10 or so, maybe I wouldn't mind it. But I'll tell you what, if he struggled, or let's say it didn't work out, um, fans would, you know, really boo him and just not really care for him very much just because he's a former Viking. But
Yeah.
if we can get that past that, that's hard for me. If we can get past that, and
Yeah.
he's effective, again, you got to take it. I mean, he
Hmm.
is very good when it comes to defensing or with defenses, and so that's his forte. So I'm all for it if it puts better product on the field. But I'd rather go with the first two I mentioned and then maybe him. But we'll see if he would even want to come to Green Bay too, right? There could be a lot of other teams wanting his services too. So
Yeah.
um, that's the thing. It's going to get competitive with coaches, and we may want a person. I think the only one that would come to mind that would pick Green Bay over anybody else would be Jimmy Leonard, just because it's,
Yeah.
with his roots in that. But it'd be awesome if he came to Green Bay. Be even more awesome if he was turned that culture around. Just because he comes in, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and you may not see success right away.
Hmm.
But the scary thing is on Sunday's game, we have two seventh round draft picks as our defense corners that'll be in the game. So
Yeah.
um, with Jair out of the game,
Hmm.
it's interesting, isn't it? Green Bay has a chance to go to the playoffs, and they sit their corner. Um, do you think that the punishment was too harsh? Now we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but you're a team that could still win the game. But let's say they don't win the game, are they going to look at that and say, why did they sit him, when they had a chance to make it to the playoffs in Jordan Love's first year? Um, they sat him. Um, was that something they should have done? Or should have they just fined him? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I did want to talk about that suspension a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, for one thing, if you watch his interview afterwards, it's hilarious. I watched it
Yeah, I saw that.
multiple times already and couldn't stop laughing. Yeah, I just don't really understand the guy, and he's definitely an interesting character to say the least. We've seen. He's entertained us before, I guess. If you watch his interview after the Miami game on Christmas Day, where he picked off Tua Tagovailoa, that was very interesting as he replayed that incident as well. Yeah, I really don't know what to think about Jair. I think the suspension could maybe mean more than just this incident. Um, but I think I've heard, at least from one other guy, a podcast I was listening to, Andy Herman, um, from the Pack a Day podcast. He was talking about the suspension, and he said that he thought it comes down to just authority. He wasn't supposed to go out there. He didn't talk to anyone before he went out there. He just kind of went out there to do the coin toss for whatever reason. And he said in his little interview after the game that he said the coach, the boys backed me, and he didn't think his coach knew he was from Charlotte or something like that. And
Hmm.
which, I mean, um, yeah, I don't know. Seems like it's kind of besides the point to me when he was not chosen to be a captain. I get it. I get what people are saying that it could be a little harsh in a way. It kind of depends how you look at it. It could definitely be a little bit harsh, but I think what they're doing is players just can't do whatever they want like that. And so I think he was really challenging the authority of the coaches. and you can't do that. They want to make sure that everyone knows that, to kind of set an example, make an example of this to just kind of show that you can't, as a player, you can't just go against what the coach says just because you want to. And even if you're Jair Alexander, you can't. And I think that was maybe what went behind the suspension. Again, as far as Jair Alexander's future in Green Bay, the shoulder thing has been interesting. Like you said about him not playing, you said that you didn't think he'd play in the Bears game and maybe not ever again for the Packers. Um, I certainly would not be at all surprised if he missed the Bears game just because, he's still got that shoulder thing that he can use as an excuse, and he'll probably just
Hmm.
um, roll himself out because of the shoulder. Now, I do get with a shoulder injury, I didn't read into it quite as much as some people did. I realize from his attitude, the way he's been talking, he does seem a little bit out on the Packers
Hmm.
right
Hmm.
now. I do kind of get that. I think most players are that way. You look at Devondre Campbell, he doesn't want to
Hmm.
play through this neck injury anymore that he
Yeah.
had been dealing with. And
Hmm.
so he's going to make sure he's fully healthy before he's back on the field. In
Hmm.
other words, guys aren't willing to put themselves on the line for Joe Barry and this defense at this
Nope.
point anymore.
Nope.
So that tells you right there for sure Joe Barry lost the locker room. But Jair Alexander has had a shoulder injury before, pretty significant. It happened when making a tackle. And the reason Jair Alexander's been practicing every week, or had been, and wasn't playing, I think is because just in practice you don't hit, you don't tackle, and I think that was the main thing that was keeping him off the field, just not wanting to um, put himself in harm's way like that. And I do think if it was maybe a different defensive coordinator, like if it was someone that was in control of the locker room that players really respected and liked, um, I think maybe he would have come back sooner. I do think it is a product
Hmm.
of Joe Barry and him. Yeah, you can tell by his attitude and the way he talks and press conferences and stuff that he isn't really happy with this team. What does that mean that he's not going to be back? That they're going to trade him? I don't really know. Obviously, Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur have said all the right things. He's a valued member of the team. We look forward to having him here for a long time. Um, but I don't really know if what they're actually thinking. I think there's going to be Adam Schefter reported that this is probably going to be, there's going to be lots of talking and discussion about his future in the offseason, probably, and just what he wants to do. And I think the Packers will, to an extent, honor what he wants to do. If he wants out, I think they will
Hmm.
trade him.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really kind of what happens. I think if they hire someone else, Jair might not,
Hmm.
because might not want to leave. I think he does like Green Bay overall. He just does not like Joe Barry. He doesn't like the defensive scheme right now. And I think if things change, um, he would be maybe willing to stay. So it's kind of just a leverage situation, and just uh, whether what all happens in the off season. So I think it's just kind of a wait and see at this point. I could see him sitting out the Bears game. Um,
Yeah.
Especially if the Packers lose this game to the Vikings, for
Yep.
sure he'll be sitting. If
100%.
the game matters, it's possible he'll play. Um, but we'll see. I don't really know what to think of the whole situation, but I do think um, there is going to be some discussion. He could very well be gone next year.
Right. 4 years, 84 million. That's what they signed him to the last contract, 2022. I think you're spot on. I think the way it sits today, he probably would like out if Green Bay's
Mhm.
committed to Joe Barry. And that's what they publicly said. They said, hey, I support him, and so That can change, and we know that. If it changes, then yeah, I think he'd probably stay. I think they'll do what he wants. If he doesn't want to be there, then why would you keep him, right? You're going to trade
Hmm.
him. Um, you don't want a player that's disgruntled because then they're just going to pull more antics to get traded. So um, I think right now that's probably where he's at, but that could change. And I'm sure coaches aren't talking to the players saying, "Hey, we are gonna get rid of him. Just sit tight." They're not gonna say that.
Hmm.
So players are gonna go with what they hear, and it's right now you're supporting Joe Barry. So I'm done.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Um, I'd like to have him back, but he's only played what 6 games this year, or 6 games the last. I forget how many games it's been, but he's been a limited time on the field, after signing that contract. So that's what's tough too. You saw it with Bakhtiari too. We sent him to that big money, and then the guy's never on the field. That was
Yeah.
a mistake contract there, um, for sure.
Yeah, and we could definitely have discussions on whether some of these um older veteran guys will be around next year as
Hmm.
well. Thinking of Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari, and I guess Devondre Campbell too could be a question mark. Um, but I guess we'll get into. I did want to talk about Matt LaFleur. First off, a quick question: is Matt LaFleur on the hot seat?
If he continues to stay connected to Joe Barry, he is. If he's his guy, no matter what, even after the end of the season, and it's like, we just got to be patient, trust the process. It's going to work, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Then will Mark Murphy step in and say, well, no, we're going to make a change, Matt. I think Matt would support that then. He'd have to, right? Because if he wants to keep his job. But um, so I would say he's not on the hot seat. I think, and the reason why I'd say he's not on the hot seat is just because um, just how Jordan Love has kind of developed, and how the offense has progressed. And I think, see, that's what you're seeing. And if you saw the same thing with the defense, you know, we wouldn't be talking about Joe Barry right now, but
Hmm.
in a negative way. But I think you've seen the offense grow and get better. And you see the emergence of Jordan Love. He's made some just spectacular throws. He's made some bad ones, but you're going to get that.
Hmm.
But the guy's efficient, and I think it's good for Matt LaFleur to be there for Jordan Love because he's got that consistent guy. He's in his ear. They got that
Hmm.
connection, the quarterback's coach, all that's, if you fire LaFleur, you're going to probably fire most of the offensive of the coaches too. That's going to really disrupt things. And I think that would be a mistake,
Hmm.
especially in his young career first year. I mean, this guy, if it wasn't for the defense, the likelihood of going to the playoffs this year, I would say would be extremely high. And it may happen even with the defense. But if we lose out again by one game, could have the defense played better and could have won more than one game? Could have we won at least one more game with them, with a better defense? Absolutely. So, so I think the offense is doing its part, and you see it progressing. And I think we want to keep that together, right? Yeah, as best we can. And
Yeah.
so I think Matt's secure. I don't see him being on the chopping block. When I say he should be fired too, it's just more of an emotional reaction to how
Yeah.
can you back Joe Barry? And I want to shake him. It's like, come on. And he's smart. I mean, I'm sure he knows that he's not doing what he needs to do. And
Hmm.
he'll land on the right side of the fence on that. And when it's done, he'll support it. And he'll still be our head coach. That's what I think. I think he stays.
Yeah, I do too. And yeah, if you look at other head coaches around the league, he's definitely one of the better head coaches, and it's not easy to find a good head coach.
Right.
Um, so I think he's definitely going to stay just because of what you said about the offense and everything. That was exactly what I was thinking as reasons for him to stay. Really, the main issue for him is just the hiring coordinators part.
Hmm.
His staff has not always been great. Um, especially the main ones, like defensive coordinator and special teams coordinator. Took them a long time to get that one right.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think what you said was spot on there, and yeah, I do think he should stay just be for that reason, for Jordan Love and for the offense. A bunch of changes on offense is not going to help a quarterback. I think we've seen that before with lots of different quarterbacks, and that's why with guys like Bryce Young and um, Zach Wilson, which I don't think Zach Wilson is it anyway, but
No, he's
those things
not.
don't help. Sam Darnold had a bad coach to start with, and he just started off wrong. And I think it's possible that Sam Darnold could have been a good quarterback if he would have started out with a better coach with like a Kyle Shanahan where he is now. So um, just it really depends on the coach and everything. And so I think having Matt LaFleur there is big for Jordan Love, and we've seen that development from the offense and how they are trending up, and the defense has been going the exact opposite direction. And so yeah, that's precisely why we need someone new there to coach the defense. If we look at playoff chances here a little bit, according to the New York Times simulator, the Packers have two more games. They'll play the Vikings in Minnesota here on Sunday night, and then they will play the Bears at home. Right now, they have a 29% of making the playoffs. If they win both games, they'll have a 95% chance of making the playoffs. If
Hmm.
they win versus the Vikings, they have a 60% chance. If they win versus the Vikings and then lose to the Bears, they have an 18% chance. If they lose to the Vikings and win versus the Bears, it's a 3% chance. So, in other words, this is pretty much an elimination game. If they lose to the Vikings, they are pretty much out. If they beat the Vikings, they have a really good chance of making the playoffs. And obviously, they pretty much have to beat the Bears as well if they want to get in the playoffs. But that shouldn't be hard, right? Packers own the Bears. So,
Hmm.
of course, when your defense is playing this bad, it doesn't really matter how um, what the ownership is like and how good the offense can do. Um, because I mean, if you can let Tommy DeVito and Bryce Young shred your defense, what do you think Justin Fields is going to do, or Jaron Hall for that matter? So,
Hmm.
um, they definitely aren't out of the woods yet. I think this team, offensively, is a really, really good team. If they had even an average defense, middle of the pack, um, I think they would be, a playoff team for sure. It's just about what the defense can do. If they can do enough to get the win. But this is kind of the opposite of what we saw this team being at the beginning of the season. We thought it was going to be, hopefully Joe Barry would figure some things out in the off season. Defense would be good, that's where all the money, the veterans, we have some more experience on that side of the ball. Lots of money there, lots of talent, lots of first round picks spent on the defensive side of the ball.
Hmm.
That was supposed to be the strong point, and then you're supposed to have a good run game, and then all that's going to take pressure off Jordan Love, and he can just develop real slowly and not have to do a whole lot. That's not really how it's been at all. And but the plus side is that we've seen Jordan Love develop a lot from week one of this year to a really good quarterback, and him and the
Hmm.
offense has had to done the heavy lifting at times. Certainly in this last game they did. They had to put up 33 points with all the injuries on offense, and still just about lost the game.
Hmm.
So
Right.
with the defense doing everything to lose the game, you have to have an offense that has to do an awful lot to kind of overrule that. It feels like kind of a tug of war on on the same team, which is
Mhm.
not great.
Yeah. It would just be nice to get to the playoffs his first year. And,
It would.
I'm not expecting them to go far in the playoffs. I don't think anybody is, but,
Yeah.
but you never know. I mean, you get in there and with our defense, San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey, if we played, man, they would just shred us. But
Hmm.
that's okay. You just want to get in and get that playoff experience, right? And get
Yeah.
that taste of it. And then players can be excited for the next season. It's something to build upon. And so um, they got to, I want them to get in. But you talked about Jordan Love and his ascension and how he's been doing. He was at the bottom of the league in passer percentage. And since that time when we talked last, his completion percentage is now 62.4. So he's right up there with guys like Patrick Mahomes, uh, Josh Allen. He's close to what they're doing. And get
Hmm.
this, he has thrown 27 touchdown passes this year. There's only two quarterbacks that have thrown for more. Dak Prescott has thrown 30, and Brock Purdy has thrown 29. He's
Hmm.
tied with 27 with Josh Allen and Jared Goff. Uh, Mahomes thrown 26. So he's right
Yeah.
up there. I mean, he's putting up some fantastic numbers. Um, and he's doing it with a pretty young receiving core.
Yeah. And we've had
And
injuries too.
injuries, yes, and he's still putting up those numbers. So he is going to be the real deal.
Yeah.
Um, Go buy your Jordan Love jerseys while they're lower price right now, but because they're going to increase.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely really excited about him moving forward.
Yeah.
The offense is so much different than the defense. They're so
Hmm.
much fun to root for.
Hmm.
Just the energy. These guys play hard, and yeah, they're so much fun. So much fun to watch, and yeah, just a really exciting unit with all those young guys, all that young energy on that side of the ball.
Right. He had some, yeah, good tight ends. Jaden Reed has been a nice addition. Too bad he got hurt, but you can see as these guys develop together, you can see they're going to have a pretty solid core. And that's Green Bay's philosophy. That's how they build teams. They don't like bringing in those big free agent dollar money wide receivers. They would rather grow within.
Hmm.
There's little growing pains with it. You got to hit on your draft picks. I still
Hmm.
like the way Ron Wolf did it. He did both. He did some free agency and he did some bringing in players um, through the draft. But of course, Ron Wolf, when he brought in free agents, is when they were on the cusp of a Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
you got to consider that too. So maybe we'll change that when we start getting better and better, and we'll bring in those key people to kind of help put us over the edge. But I think it's a blend of both. But right now, I like
Hmm.
how they're building it and excited for it too. So I like the playoff scenarios. 95% chance though of making it if you win both games. Those are
Hmm.
some pretty solid numbers.
Yep, for sure. So now we just gotta win both games, I guess.
Hmm.
Should be fun trying to stop Justin Jefferson, but if it's Jaron Hall at quarterback, hopefully we can put enough pressure on him to get him to make some mistakes, and
Yeah.
the throws won't be, um, you know, quite as on target as you would expect from like a Kirk Cousins. So,
Well, and keep in mind they're going to be short too. I mean, TJ Hawkinson's out for the year with a knee injury.
hmm.
Addison's dinged up.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if he'll play, but he's hurting. So, I mean, Brandon Powell will have to step in there. KJ Osborne.
yep,
Still, I mean, decent receivers that can still
yeah.
be pesky and cause trouble,
I
but
mean,
they are
just look at
hurting.
Carolina's wide receivers. So
I know.
it doesn't really matter who you are. You can torch the Packers defense.
Unfortunately, yeah. I was trying to make myself feel better, but yeah, you are 100% right on that. So, um, but you think, well, they got Jaron Hall. Well, Bryce Young, who was struggling. He had the lowest passer rating in the league. Oh, that's what's so scary. The lowest
Yeah.
passer rating in the league. And yet he put up some great numbers for him.
Hmm.
So, yeah. Well, again, if we lose that game, I hope we lose big and not just lose by like a point or two.
Hmm.
because if it makes it so obvious that Joe Barry has to go, then I'm willing to let's make it obvious. But
Hmm.
um, I think it'll be a closer game. I think Green Bay will
Yeah,
pull it out. I think we'll be fine.
I think so
Um,
too.
but it's going to be probably closer than we want it to be, and we're
Hmm.
going to say, hey, we should have won by more, but we'll take the win. Hopefully, that's what we're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was great having you on the show. It's a good
Appreciate it.
discussion. Good discussion
Yeah.
there. So,
All right, anytime. And yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah.
Go Pack, go.
Yeah, let's go.